I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of story that changes the way you see the people closest to you. I walked into my living room on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Nothing felt different. The hall light was on, dinner sat half-eaten on the kitchen counter, and the scent of expensive perfume hung lightly in the hallway. But by the time I went to bed that night, everything I thought I knew about my marriage was gone. And what I found out next, most people can't even bring themselves to say out loud. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. My name is Marcus Vance. For 9 years, I thought I was living a normal, quiet life in Columbus, Ohio. I ran a moderately successful commercial logistics company, a business I spent 12 hours a day building from the ground up. My wife, Vanessa, was an interior designer whose career was mostly financed by my hard work. We lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, drove clean cars, and had dinner with our neighbors on weekends. To anyone looking from the outside, we were the ideal Midwest couple. But marriage has a way of hiding rot beneath fresh paint. The signs had been there for 6 months, though I was too trusting, or perhaps too tired to see them clearly. Vanessa suddenly began locking her phone face down on the nightstand. She started attending urgent client consults in downtown Cleveland that lasted well past midnight. When I asked about her changing schedule, she brushed me off with sharp, rehearsed irritation, claiming I was stifling her independence. On that ordinary Tuesday night, while Vanessa was supposedly at an industry gala, I logged into our shared laptop to check an online banking statement. A pop-up notification appeared in the corner of the screen, a cloud sync from her personal messaging app. I didn't mean to snoop, but the preview message sent a cold chill through my chest. He has no idea about the offshore account yet. Once the divorce papers are filed, we take everything. My hands trembled as I clicked open the thread. What I uncovered over the next 3 hours made my stomach turn. Vanessa wasn't just having an affair. She had been systematically planning to destroy me financially for over a year. Her lover was a man named Julian, a flashy hedge fund consultant from Chicago who presented himself online as a multi-millionaire jet-setter. Together, they had devised a meticulous plot. Vanessa had been funneling money out of my logistics business through fake vendor invoices, transferring hundreds of thousands of dollars into hidden accounts. Their plan was simple, yet devastating. She would file for divorce, claim I was financially abusive, demand $3.5 million in alimony and asset division, and leave me destitute while she and Julian rode off into the sunset. Sitting alone in the dark living room, looking at their intimate photos and calculated spreadsheets, the pain was blinding. But beneath the betrayal, a quiet, freezing anger took root. I didn't scream. I didn't pack her bags. Instead, I carefully exported every document, message, and financial transaction onto an encrypted drive, closed the laptop, and waited. When Vanessa walked through the front door an hour later, smelling of wine and hotel soap, she smiled her usual distant smile. "You're still up, Marcus?" she asked, kicking off her designer heels. "Just finishing up some paperwork, honey," I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. "How was the gala?" She gave a vague, rehearsed answer about networking and went straight to the bathroom to shower. As I lay in bed that night listening to the water running, I realized that the woman I loved was a total stranger. The next morning I didn't confront her. I knew that if I reacted emotionally, her high-priced legal team would spin the narrative against me. I needed expert counsel. That afternoon, I walked into the office of Marcus Vance, no relation, but one of the most ruthless forensic family law attorneys in Ohio. Eleanor sat behind her mahogany desk reviewing the drive I provided. Her sharp eyes scanned the messages and bank statements with practiced precision. "Your wife and her friend Julian have been very thorough, Marcus," Eleanor said smoothly. "She set up a narrative that you ran the business into the ground and withheld funds from her. In Ohio, without hard proof of deliberate dissipation of marital assets, Judges often lean toward equal division. And given your income disparity, she could easily secure heavy temporary support. I have the proof right there, I said, leaning forward. Eleanor shook her head gently. You have digital messages, but in a high-stakes divorce, they will claim these screenshots were fabricated or hacked illegally. We need irrefutable paper trails. We need bank records, corporate filings, and live testimony. Let her file first. Let her think she has the upper hand. 3 weeks later, the hammer dropped. I was served with divorce papers at my office in front of my employees. Vanessa didn't just ask for a routine settlement. She claimed emergency financial hardship, alleging that I had cut off her credit cards and left her with nothing. She demanded $15,000 a month in temporary spousal support, full ownership of our home, and $3.5 million from my business valuation. When we met for the initial court hearing, Vanessa arrived looking frail and distraught, wearing a modest black dress, flanked by her high-powered attorney, Richard Vance. Sitting directly behind her in the gallery, dressed in a tailored Italian suit, was Julian Sterling himself, smiling smugly at me from across the aisle. Julian was playing the role of the supportive family friend, but his contemptuous smirk made his true intentions clear. He thought I was a soft-spoken pushover who would fold under legal pressure. During the preliminary hearings, Vanessa's lawyer painted a tragic picture. He described Vanessa as a devoted wife who had sacrificed her youth to support my business, only to be financially isolated and emotionally neglected. My client is living on borrowed funds while Mr. Vance hoards millions in private accounts, Richard declared passionately to the judge. I sat quietly next to Eleanor, taking notes, refusing to look back at Julian. Eleanor didn't push back hard during the early motion hearings. She let Vanessa's team win minor procedural victories, allowing them to build a false sense of absolute security. Julian and Vanessa were so confident that they began appearing together publicly in Columbus, dining at upscale steakhouses and leasing a luxury high-rise apartment on my dime through temporary maintenance orders. What Vanessa and Julian didn't know was that Eleanor had hired a team of private investigators and forensic accountants who were digging far deeper than just my wife's bank records. They were investigating Julian Sterling, and what they uncovered transformed our entire legal defense into a ticking time bomb. Julian wasn't a multimillionaire hedge fund mogul at all. He was a notorious financial grifter who had spent a decade targeting wealthy married women, persuading them to extract money from their husbands' businesses, and then siphon those funds into fictitious investment funds controlled by him. But there was an even bigger secret Julian was hiding, one that would dismantle their entire scheme. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. Julian Sterling was not single. In fact, he had been married for 12 years to a woman named Victoria Sterling, a high-ranking corporate prosecutor from Chicago whose family possessed immense legal influence. Victoria had no idea that her husband was spending half his month in Ohio running a romance scam on Vanessa. Julian had told his wife that he was expanding his investment firm's Midwest branch in Columbus. While Julian was using Vanessa to steal my life savings, he was simultaneously using funds stolen from previous victims to maintain his lavish lifestyle with Victoria in Illinois. Eleanor personally flew to Chicago to present the evidence directly to Victoria. When Victoria realized her husband was a fraud, a swindler, and an adulterer, she didn't cry. She requested a full copy of the audit records and agreed to cooperate with our legal team in secret. The final evidentiary trial was set for a chilly Thursday morning at the Franklin County Domestic Relations Court. Vanessa arrived at court looking triumphant. She was convinced that the judge was about to sign off on the final decree, forcing me to liquidate my business and transfer millions to her account. Julian sat proudly in the front row of the gallery, whispering encouragement to her and shooting cold glares in my direction. When the Honorable Judge Thomas called the court to order, Vanessa's attorney took the podium. "Your Honor, we have presented clear evidence of Mr. Vance's substantial business holdings. My client has been subjected to severe economic hardship and is entitled to her fair share of the marital estate, specifically the $3.5 million lump sum and ongoing alimony. Judge Thomas turned to Eleanor. Does the defense have any final arguments before I make a ruling on asset distribution? Eleanor stood up slowly, her expression calm and composed. Yes, Your Honor. We have one final witness to call under subpoena regarding the fraudulent transfer of marital assets and conspiracy to defraud my client. Vanessa's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Discovery is closed, Your Honor. Counsel is trying to delay the judgment. Overruled, Judge Thomas snapped. If there are allegations of financial fraud before this court, I will hear them. State your witness, Ms. Vance. Eleanor turned toward the heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom. The defense calls Victoria Sterling to the stand. The heavy oak doors opened, and a tall, impeccably dressed woman walked in. She carried a thick leather briefcase and walked with the absolute authority of a veteran prosecutor. The moment Julian saw her, the blood drained completely from his face. His confident smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated terror. He tried to duck down in his seat, but Victoria's icy glare locked directly onto him. Vanessa turned around in confusion, looking between Julian and the mysterious woman walking down the aisle. Who is that? Vanessa whispered loudly to her lawyer, her voice laced with sudden anxiety. Julian didn't answer. He couldn't speak. His hands were visibly shaking on the bench. Victoria took the witness stand, swore the oath, and stated her name and profession for the court record. Eleanor walked up to the podium. Mrs. Sterling, could you please state your relationship to the gentleman sitting in the front row of the gallery, Mr. Julian Sterling? He is my husband, Victoria answered clearly, her voice echoing off the high ceilings of the courtroom. The gallery gasped. Vanessa froze, her mouth falling open as she stared at Victoria in complete shock. Your husband? Vanessa stammered, breaking court protocol. Julian, what is she talking about? You told me you were divorced 5 years ago. Julian stared at the floor, refusing to make eye contact with either woman. Silence in the courtroom! Judge Thomas banged his gavel sternly. Mrs. Sterling, please proceed. Eleanor handed Victoria a series of bound financial documents. Mrs. Sterling, can you explain the nature of the joint accounts listed in these exhibits? Victoria adjusted her glasses and addressed the judge. Your Honor, over the past 14 months, my husband, Julian Sterling, opened 3 offshore holding accounts under our joint family trust. He deposited over $800,000 into these accounts, funds that originated directly from shell companies set up by Mrs. Vanessa Vance using money stolen from her husband's logistics company. Vanessa sat frozen, her face turning pale as paper. Julian convinced Mrs. Vance that he was investing this money for their future together. Victoria continued flawlessly. In reality, he was using those stolen funds to pay off personal debts and cover mortgage payments on our primary residence in Chicago. The courtroom was dead silent. Vanessa turned on Julian, her eyes wide with desperation and rage. You used me? She screamed, abandoning all courtroom composure. You told me you loved me. You told me we were buying a house in Aspen. You took everything I pulled from Marcus's accounts. Order in this court. Judge Thomas slammed his gavel repeatedly. Mrs. Vance, sit down immediately or I will have you held in contempt. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story, and share your thoughts in the comments. Vanessa sank back into her chair, burying her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably as the reality of her situation collapsed on top of her. She hadn't just destroyed her marriage. She had been systematically scammed by the very man she ruined her life for. Eleanor stepped forward and presented the final stack of documents to the judge. Your Honor, we move for an immediate dismissal of the petitioner's alimony demands under the doctrine of unclean hands. Furthermore, we are filing criminal complaints for grand larceny, embezzlement, and conspiracy against both Mrs. Vance and Mr. Sterling. Judge Thomas reviewed the evidence with a stern, furious expression. When he looked up, his tone was sharp enough to cut glass. In my 25 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a blatant, calculated display of greed and bad faith, the judge declared. The petitioner's request for alimony support and asset division is denied in its entirety. Judge Thomas didn't stop there. He ordered Vanessa to forfeit her entire share of our marital equity, including the house and her luxury vehicle, to compensate my business for the stolen funds. Furthermore, he referred the case directly to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. As officers entered the courtroom to take Julian into custody on outstanding fraud warrants from Illinois, Victoria walked past her disgraced husband without giving him a second glance. She stopped by my table, offered a subtle nod of respect, and walked out of the building to begin her own swift divorce proceedings. Vanessa was left sitting alone at the defense table, completely ruined, facing severe criminal charges and financial bankruptcy. Walking out of the Franklin County Courthouse that afternoon into the crisp autumn air, I took a deep breath for the first time in nearly a year. The betrayal had hurt deeply, but standing up for myself and exposing the truth gave me back my life and my freedom. Today my logistics business is thriving better than ever, and I've rebuilt my life on a foundation of true peace and wisdom. Thank you so much for watching this story today on family secrets and revenge. If this story resonated with you or taught you a lesson about trust and resilience, please hit that like button, leave a comment with your overall thoughts, subscribe to Family Secrets and Revenge, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means the world to us. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and we'll see you in the next story.